They said it lay beyond the north wind, a realm where the sun never set and shadows did not exist. The air was soft, the rivers shone with silver light, and time itself seemed to stand still. The ancients called it Hyperborea, a land untouched by winter and war, a paradise at the edge of the world. It was said that men there lived for 1,000 years, their hearts free from sorrow, their faces glowing like dawn. Greek poets spoke of it as a sacred kingdom where the divine and mortal walk side by side. No sickness, no hunger, no fear, only eternal harmony beneath a golden sky. Each year, the god Apollo is believed to leave Greece and journey north to dwell among the Hyperboreans. He returned renewed, carrying the light of their world back to the temples of men. For them, he was not a god from Olympus, but a friend who once shared their eternal spring. Yet as centuries passed, Hyperborea vanished from maps. Sailors searched beyond the Arctic seas, seeking its radiant shores and never returning. Some claimed to have seen towers rising from the mist. Others spoke of cities carved into mountains of ice. But no one brought proof, only dreams and silence. Still, the legend endured. Herodotus wrote of a people untouched by death. Pindar sang of their hymns that echoed across the wind. And even today, under the northern lights, some say the sky remembers them, the lost children of the sun. If the stories are true, then Hyperborea was not only a myth, but a memory of a forgotten age, when God still walked among men and the north glowed with eternal light. In the age of myth, the Greeks believed the world stretched far beyond the lands they knew. To the east lay the realms of the rising sun. To the south, the kingdoms of eternal heat. But to the north, beyond the mountains and the winds, was a place so pure that even the gods envied it. They called it Hyperborea, the land beyond the north wind. Herodotus wrote of the Hyperboreans with a strange respect, as if he were describing something half remembered rather than imagined. He told of sacred gifts carried by pilgrims from the north, passed from tribe to tribe until they reached the island of Delos. Offerings to Apollo, the god who once lived among them. No other people, he said, were so blessed by the sun. Pindar, the poet of light, called them the happiest of mortals. He sang that their fields never felt the sting of frost, that the earth gave fruit without toil, and that music filled their days like air itself. They lived beyond the reach of sorrow. Their spirits carried on warm winds that blew from an unseen sea. Other ancient writers expanded the tale. Hecate spoke of their shining cities surrounded by mountains of snow. Diodorus of Sicily claimed that Apollo's temple there was circular, its roof open to the heavens, so that the god could descend each year in his golden chariot to bathe the world in light. Even the Roman geographer Pomponius Mela placed Hyperborea in the farthest north, inhabited by tall men of radiant beauty, living in peace and abundance under a sky that never darkened. The myth spoke not only of beauty, but of memory. They hinted that the Hyperboreans were not human as we are, that they belonged to an earlier age, a race born before the world turned cold. When the great winds shifted and the seas rose, their land vanished beneath ice and mist, leaving only legends behind. For centuries, scholars tried to find the truth within the stories. Some believe Hyperborea was nothing more than poetic imagination. Others argued it was based on forgotten geography, a real land lost to time, perhaps near the Arctic Circle, where remnants of an ancient civilization still sleep under the snow. Maps from the Renaissance began to show strange islands around the North Pole. 4 lands divided by rivers. At the center, a great mountain called Rupes Nigra. In the writings of Mercator and in the forgotten charts of explorers, these islands were marked as Hyperborea. They described whirlpools that pulled ships downward and openings that led into the earth itself. To the learned men of that era, Hyperborea was not a myth, but a mystery yet unsolved. If the poles had once been warm, if continents had shifted and climates had turned, then perhaps the North had indeed been the cradle of humankind. The theory of polar displacement, the idea that Earth's axis once moved, gave new life to the legend. Scientists spoke of sudden glacial floods, of ancient forests now buried under ice, of mammoths frozen in motion as it caught in an instant of disaster. What if before the Great Freeze, there was truly a continent bathed in sunlight where life thrived under a gentle northern sky? The Greeks may have remembered what science has forgotten. Their myths were not fantasies, but echoes, fragments of stories carried through millennia, shaped by memory, time, and loss. And if those echoes are real, then somewhere beneath the Arctic ice may still rest the cradle of the first divine civilization, the vanished world of Hyperborea. Long before the maps of the earth were drawn, when seas had no borders and horizons had no end, there were stories whispered among sailors and wanderers about a land that glowed beneath the northern stars. A shining crown above the world, a realm where summer never ended and the night was filled with light. That land was called Hyperborea. Ancient mariners told of strange signs in the polar sea. Birds migrating north instead of south. Warm winds rising from icy waters. Pieces of green vegetation drifting among icebergs. They believed these were the last traces of a continent that once stood proud in the Arctic, now swallowed by the frozen ocean. The oldest myths describe Hyperborea as lying beyond the Riparian Mountains, a phrase that puzzled historians for centuries. Those mountains were said to guard a hidden world, where the sun circled endlessly above the horizon. Modern scholars now know that such light exists only near the poles, a clue buried in plain sight, suggesting the myth was never purely poetic. When geologists began to dig into the Arctic soil, they found something that defied belief. Fossils of tropical ferns and palm trees, pollen from flowers that can only grow under a warm sun, entire forests buried beneath layers of ice. It meant that the Arctic, long before human memory, was not always cold. It had once been alive. The theory of a shifting Earth soon followed. If the planet's axis had tilted during a cataclysmic event, then the lands of the far north could once have stood closer to the equator. A paradise turned to ice in a single instant. The people who lived there would have perished or fled south, carrying with them memories of their radiant homeland. To later generations, these memories became the legend of Hyperborea. In the 16th century, a strange map began to circulate among scholars. It was drawn by Gerardus Mercator, the greatest cartographer of his age. At the center of the Arctic Ocean, he placed 4 great islands, divided by rivers that flowed toward a whirlpool. And in the middle, a massive black mountain, the Rupus Nigra, which he described as a magnetic peak drawing all compasses to it. He called the entire region Hyperborea. To Mercator, this was not imagination, but inherited knowledge, information preserved from older times, perhaps from civilizations that existed before the ice. Another cartographer, Orontius Phineus, published a similar map in 1531, depicting the Arctic free of ice, its mountains, rivers, and cities clearly drawn. Modern researchers have compared these maps to satellite images of the Arctic seabed and found shocking similarities, shapes of ridges and plateaus that match the ancient charts. How can men of the Renaissance know the hidden geography of a region still locked in ice? Whose knowledge were they truly copying? By the early 20th century, polar explorers began to report phenomena that echoed the old tales. Fridtjof Nansen, drifting on. The ice aboard his ship Fram wrote of strange warmth under the frozen sea, of dust in the snow that seemed to fall from nowhere, and of magnetic fields that twisted the compass without reason. He spoke of an endless light, a soft glow that seemed to come not from the sun, but from beneath the earth itself. Scientists studying the Arctic floor have since discovered deep caverns beneath the crust, some large enough to contain entire valleys. Thermal readings show warm currents rising from below as if the earth were breathing. To some, it is merely a geological curiosity. To others, it is the final clue, the gate to a buried world, the last echo of Hyperborea. Even now, satellites reveal circular formations under the polar ice, patterns too precise to be accidents of nature. NASA calls them fractures in the ice sheet, but their geometry, perfect rings aligned with magnetic north, keeps the mystery alive. If the myth is true, Hyperborea did not vanish. It descended. Its temples entombed in crystal, its towers frozen mid-song, its rivers locked beneath glass. And when the poles shift once more, when the ice melts and the sea withdraws, the northern lights may reveal what they have hidden for millennia. Perhaps then the world will see the cradle of its own beginning, a land not of gods and mortals, but of memory. A civilization born in light and lost to the silence of snow. The legends of Hyperborea did not end with Greece. They spread across continents, hidden within myths that spoke of gods descending from the north, bearers of light, wisdom, and fire. In every ancient culture, a similar memory survives, a race of tall, radiant beings who arrived after a great cataclysm and taught humanity how to live again. In India, the Vedas speak of Uttarakuru, the northern land of bliss, where the gods once walked among men. Its people were said to live without pain or decay, and to speak the language of the stars. To the Persians, there was Vea, the first land of the noble ones, later swallowed by snow and turned into the frozen north. Among the Celts, the story became Tir na Nog, the land of eternal youth, hidden beyond the sea, where time stands still. Different names, different peoples, yet all pointing to the same origin. The Hyperboreans were described not merely as humans, but as something more. Herodotus called them the sons of light. Other writers spoke of their music that healed wounds, their breath that cured sickness, and their bodies untouched by age. It was said they built with sound, not stone, shaping matter through resonance, as if the world itself obeyed their harmony. Their temples were circular, aligned with the path of the sun, reflecting its rays as symbols of perfection. To the Greeks, this power belonged to Apollo, but perhaps the god was only a memory of the Hyperborean kings, being so far beyond ordinary man that they seem divine. Modern scholars have found something unsettling in these myths. Across the northern hemisphere, from Siberia to Scandinavia, from the Ural Mountains to the shores of Alaska, there are ancient symbols that repeat the same forms: spirals of light, radiant discs, and sun wheels carved into rock. They appear in petroglyphs, separated by oceans and millennia, yet identical in pattern. It is as if all these distant peoples remembered the same teachers, the same visitors from a forgotten world. In the 20th century, the mystery took a new form. Genetic studies revealed that many northern populations, from the Finns and the Sami to certain tribes in the Himalayas, share rare ancestral markers that do not match any known migration pattern. Some of these genes appear older than the last ice age, hinting at a common origin far to the north, in a region that no longer exists. If true, then Hyperborea was not just a legend of gods, but the ancestral home of man himself. The parallels run deeper. The myths of Atlantis speak of priests who fled a sinking land and brought knowledge to Egypt. The stories of Mu tell of sages who crossed the oceans before their continent drowned. The Hyperborean tradition may have been the same event seen from another angle. Not a sunken island, but a world frozen in an instant, its survivors scattering south to seed new civilizations. Their memory became the spark of human culture, the origin of writing, astronomy, and sacred geometry. Some researchers point to the sudden rise of advanced societies around 10,000 BCE, Egypt, Sumer, the Indus Valley, as evidence that knowledge did not evolve slowly, but appeared fully formed, as if given. Could that knowledge have come from the north, from those who once lived beneath a sun that never set? In the midst of the Greeks, Apollo's yearly journey from Hyperborea was more than poetry. It symbolized the return of light, the rebirth of civilization after darkness. The god who brought music, reason, and order may have been the personification of a real migration, a flow of knowledge from a dying northern world into the newborn south. Even our own bodies may carry that story. Traces of ancient adaptation to long polar days remain in our biology, a rhythm inherited from ancestors who lived where day and night were one. Our fascination with light, our fear of endless winter, our longing for the lost golden age, all may be fragments of Hyperborea, still living in human memory. The legend says that when the world turned cold, the Hyperboreans vanished into the mountains, descending through hidden gates into the inner earth. There they built a new realm, waiting for the time when the sun would return. The Tibetans called it Shambhala, the Buddhists Agartha, the Greeks Hyperborea, but all spoke of the same promise, that one day the children of the north would rise again, and the world would be renewed by light. When the age of exploration dawned, the legend of Hyperborea reawakened. For centuries it had slept in the pages of poets, but now men with compasses and sails sought to find it again. They believed that somewhere beyond the Arctic Circle lay a forgotten world sealed beneath the ice, and that within it still burned the light of the gods. In the 17th century, northern expeditions from Russia and Scandinavia began to gather strange reports. Hunters in the White Sea spoke of ruins emerging from thawing permafrost. Vast stones cut with impossible precision. On the Kola Peninsula, travelers found circles of standing rocks aligned perfectly with the rising sun of midsummer. Locals whispered that these were the cities of the ancient giants, and that deep within the tundra were caverns that led to their underground halls. As science advanced, belief turned into obsession. In the late 19th century, explorers such as Balto, Amundsen, and Nansen described magnetic disturbance that twisted their instruments in skies that glowed with unnatural colors. Some said they heard a low hum beneath the ice, as if the earth itself were alive. The indigenous Nenets and Yakuts told them of a land to the north that no man could enter, a place of eternal light where spirits guarded the gates to another world. They called it Sirip Koi, the mountain that sings. In the 20th century, the myth reached its most dangerous form. Nazi expeditions under Heinrich Himmler searched for the entrance to Hyperborea in the Arctic, believing it to be the cradle of the Aryan race. Documents recovered after the war speak of secret flights over Greenland and of submarines that vanished beneath the ice cap. No proof was ever found, but the idea that a lost civilization lay hidden in the north haunted both mystics and scientists alike. After the fall of the Reich, the Soviet Union continued its own polar missions. Between the 1950s and 1970s, Soviet geologists drilling into the Arctic shelf reported heat signatures where none should exist. Some expeditions returned with samples of stone that contained traces of unknown alloys. Others never returned at all. The official explanation was equipment failure. Unofficially, the story spread through the ranks of glowing caverns, of voices heard through the ice, of machines buried in crystal long before humanity's birth. In recent decades, satellites have uncovered new anomalies. Circular depressions beneath Greenland's glaciers, perfectly symmetrical and miles wide, Massive magnetic fields around the North Pole, as if something vast and metallic lay just beneath the crust. Infrared scans reveal heat rising from the polar depths, a pulse that seems to move. NASA calls them geothermal vents, but the patterns are too geometric, too deliberate. Some images even show shadows that resemble ruined structures, buried domes, and collapsed corridors. Researchers who study these anomalies speak of architectural echoes, shapes that match known proportions of ancient temples from Greece, Egypt, and Sumer. Could it be coincidence? Or could the builders of those temples have once come from the same northern source? Hyperborea may not have perished completely. It may have retreated, hidden beneath the ice, deep within the earth, shielded from the chaos of later ages. Some believe that deep tunnels connect the polar regions to vast subterranean realms. The legendary Agartha, described in Tibetan texts, the same kingdom where the Hyperboreans were said to have taken refuge. There, it is said, they preserved the ancient wisdom of light and harmony, waiting for the time when the surface world would be ready once more. If the myths hold any truth, then the northern lights are not only a spectacle of nature, but a signal, the heartbeat of a buried world. Every shimmer in the sky may be the echo of the civilization that once ruled the dawn of man. And when the ice melts and the Arctic awakens, the gods may not return from the heavens, but from beneath our feet. Perhaps they never left. Perhaps they watched still, waiting for the earth to remember its origin, and for humanity to remember the light that made it human. The earth keeps its oldest memories in silence. Beneath the ice, beneath the weight of endless winters, sleep stories too ancient for history to remember. Somewhere below the Arctic seas, the breath of forgotten ages still lingers. And perhaps among those echoes lies the heartbeat of Hyperborea. No one knows if it truly existed. No explorer has brought back proof. No satellite has revealed its shining towers, yet the idea refuses to die. It moves through our blood like an inherited dream, a memory of a world that once was perfect, where light never faded and the soul never aged. For thousands of years, humanity has searched outward for paradise, but perhaps the ancients were right. The lost world we seek is not beyond the horizon, but within our own forgotten nature. The Greeks placed Hyperborea beyond the north wind, but the poet said it could be reached only by those whose hearts were free from fear. The journey then is inward, toward the quiet center of the human spirit, where the eternal sun still shines. Our ancestors may have carried that light across the world as they fled the great cold. They built monuments that mirrored the heavens, stones aligned to the path of the solstice, temples that called back the warmth of their vanished homeland. Every pillar, every circle, every sacred flame was a way to keep the memory alive. Even now, when we stand before the pyramids of Egypt or the stone circles of the north, we are standing in the shadow of Hyperborea, the first civilization of light. But every age of light casts its own darkness. Legends tell us that the Hyperboreans grew proud, that they mastered the harmony of creation itself and sought to command the forces that had once blessed them. When man forgets gratitude, the earth remembers balance. The winds turned, the seas rose, the sky dimmed, and paradise was sealed beneath ice. The story repeats with every empire, every civilization that believes itself eternal. Perhaps the fall of Hyperborea was not punishment, but mercy, a chance for the world to begin again. Scientists today speak of shifting poles, of the wandering magnetic heart of the planet. They measure the same patterns that ancient myths described as divine. Perhaps what we call physics was once known as faith. Perhaps the ancients did not separate the two. In their world, knowledge and reverence were one and the same. They did not study the sun, they listened to it. They did not dissect the earth, they spoke to it. And in that communion, they found harmony. That harmony is what we have lost. The legend of Hyperborea endures because it reminds us of what we could be. It tells us that human beings once lived without greed, without the hunger for domination, in a state where knowledge served beauty and beauty served the sacred. It is not nostalgia, it is instruction, a whisper from the past saying, remember what you were before you forgot. At night, the aurora sweeps across the polar sky. Its colors pulse like the breath of something vast and ancient. Science calls it charged particles colliding in the upper atmosphere. But when you stand beneath it, you feel more than the mechanics of light. You feel memory. You feel the world itself remembering what it once was. Perhaps the northern lights are not only a spectacle, but a message, a bridge between ages, between the living and the forgotten. One day, when the ice melts and the seas recede, we may look upon the buried stones of the north and realize that the myth was never a lie. We may see that every legend was a mirror, reflecting the longing of the human heart for a world of balance and light. And maybe then, when the wind returns to the mountains and the sun stands still upon the horizon, the gates of Hyperborea will open again, not as a place, but as a state of awakening. Because perhaps Hyperborea never vanished, perhaps it simply moved into the minds of those who still seek truth, into the hands of those who build with care, into the hearts of those who remember the light. It waits in the silence of the north, in the space between the stars, in the quiet that follows every storm. And when humanity is ready, the world will tilt once more toward the sun. The ice will break, the light will return, and the song of the first dawn will be heard again. For the silence of the north is not emptiness, it is promise. Promise that the eternal spring will rise again, that the forgotten will awaken, and that we, the children of light, will finally remember who we are.